Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Andrew Hong, the founder of Tobe, a digital agency specializing in growing and retaining customer bases using content, community, and technology. His career transitioned from a Big Four strategy and operations consultant to an entrepreneurial digital marketing expert, following his success with Facebook ads as a DJ. With over 15 years of experience, he now leads Tobe in providing strategic guidance across multiple sectors like real estate, banking, and SaaS. Renowned for his ability to identify and adapt to market trends, Andrew also imparts his insights through podcasts and a sought-after advisor helping business incorporating these shifts into their growth strategy. I'm sure so many are curious about who Andrew is and what kind of background he has. Hopefully, we can answer some of your questions today. Hi, Andrew. How are you?
Hey, so I think that was a great intro, and it's probably as formal as we'll probably get today. So thanks, Lisi, for that. For everybody out there listening, if you don't know, Lisi is my wife, and we're launching this, call it a podcast. I'm just actually calling it recording number 1 for the professionals community. And I thought it was a good idea if we're launching a professional services community to basically do a recording to talk about my background in professional services and also talk about why I started this community. And in fact, I was sort of writing out this post, and for a lot of you that know me, like I have a tendency to be pretty detailed with the way I write things. I also know that nobody likes to read long things anymore, and that video and audio is obviously what I've been kind of evangelizing over the last, 5 to 10 years. So I saw this recording podcast, whatever you want to call it, as an opportunity to kind of create the first piece of programming for the professionals community. And I think the founding partners that are all probably listening to this right now, I picked all of you because we have a slightly deeper connection than just our client sort of agency relationship, right? And some of you have heard my background. Some of you have heard what I've done in the professional services world. And I think I had a very interesting career in starting out as a very junior level kind of associate at a big corporation, and then quitting, kind of starting my own freelance professional services firm, and then eventually starting Tobe. So I think there's some insight that I can share with all of you on my background and why I'm qualified, if you would, to lead this community. We're also doing this in our home in Utah. So we're in Saratoga Springs, Utah. We have a dog and a cat. Tobe, who some of you might know, is sitting right here. You probably can't see him, but he'll pop up. Oh, he's growling. Yeah, there he is. Crazy Tobe. And then we just got a cat. Her name is Eve, who we sort of adopted from a friend of mine who couldn't keep her anymore. So you probably saw Eve jump up on the couch. You probably heard her meow. Tobe is moving around, trying to find a place to sit down. But I wanted to keep this casual. So, we're doing this at our home. I thought Lisi would be the best person to kind of interview me, and that I hope you get some good insights out of, sort of what we talk about today.
Yeah, so let's get into some of the things you mentioned in detail so people have a more perspective on why you have the views that you have today and the things that you do today, right? So let's start from the very beginning. Where did you go to school, and what was your first job out of college?
Yeah, so I went to school at the University of Virginia. Lisi went there as well. We were both
where we met.
Yeah, it's where we met. We didn't date when we were in school. We started dating after school, but we were friends, and we had a close group of friends who we still sort of keep in touch with today. And I went to UVA, studied economics. I applied to the business school. I did not get into the business school. At UVA, you apply to go into the comm school or commerce school, the McIntire School of Commerce. You apply your second year to go into your third year and fourth year, and you finish your undergrad there. And so I applied there. I was rejected because I wasn't that great of a student, and it wasn't hard to get in. I just was not a very good student my first and second year. And so I applied. I actually set up an appointment with the dean of the School of Commerce to kind of plead my case. And I guess going to her and saying I was made for this, like I was born for this, wasn't a good enough reason. Probably needed to learn some sales skills back then.
I actually did not know about this meeting, so this is something new for me to learn as well.
Yep. I remember going there, sitting down with her. She kind of asked me why my grades were so bad. And I was honest with her. These are the classes that required you to be in class, and I didn't show up. So, that probably didn't sit well, very, very well with her either. But regardless, I ended up finishing UVA with a degree in economics. My college roommate, one of my college roommates, who's a really good friends with Lisi as well, he was kind of on track for the 5-year plan at school. So we definitely kind of reinforced each other's bad habits. But one thing was for certain was I think we were both pretty smart guys. And when we were looking at jobs in our junior and senior year, investment banking was like the really big thing. This was 2006, just before 2005, actually, before the financial. Projects, different things. And I love studying companies, right? And that's something that I think was always part of me since I was like a little kid. So I decided, most of the kids at the time, you apply to consulting jobs or investment banking jobs if you're looking for that kind of stuff. And I applied to KPMG. I was recruited at a school for KPMG. The guy who recruited me, his name is Craig Ferruda. He specifically picked me out because he saw on my resume that I had started a company when I was living in California. And so that sort of distinguished me. And I met with him. I met with the team. It just kind of seemed like a little bit of a fraternity. KPMG was, at least. And, it wasn't...
Hi, Craig, if you're listening.
Yeah. Greg, that was the impression that I got, by the way, that, KPMG was the frat and the rest of them were kind of the buttoned up, let's say more scholarly fraternities, if you would. But anyways, I ended up getting a job in KPMG's advisory practice. At the time it was called business operations improvement or something like that. It was really operational consulting, and really, I ended up joining KPMG because it was a thing that most people did after graduating from UVA and living in the DC area. I moved up to DC after that, and just basically became an associate at KPMG as my first job. Yeah.
I see. So how long did you work in the consulting industry?
So in the Big Four, so I spent the first probably 5 years of my career at the Big Four. The first one being KPMG, where I went out of school. I worked for 2.5 years there. I think when you get out as a junior level kind of employee, consulting and banking might actually be one of the best fields to go in. And for anyone out there who's might hate the idea of going into consulting or banking and you just want to go straight into tech or product, the thing about consulting is that it teaches you some really fundamental business skills. Those fundamental business skills are like how to write an email, right?
How to interact with a very high level client.
Right. And even at KPMG, we had a finishing school, like a consultant school where they were literally, if you go to a business dinner, the bread plate is on the left, your drink is on the right, and you work inwards on your, it's like etiquette school. And, it seems really old fashioned to say it in this day and age, like to go to quote unquote etiquette school. But it served me really well as I kind of progressed through my career, not only at KPMG, but, as an entrepreneur. I learned a lot, and I learned some really good basic business skills. And it's shocking today, like in the age of how easy it is to create content, like how sloppy things can be sometimes. And I just remember, like, you wouldn't get a high performance review if you had like a typo in a proposal. That was the kind of culture that it was. But I think it served me well, and I learned a lot. And I started out on a financial management project with the Department of Defense, specifically with the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense. And we were basically implementing a financial management system for the DoD to help them evaluate military equipment. For everyone that doesn't know, the military the military expenses all their equipment off their books right away. They don't depreciate it like you would treat with GAAP accounting or anything like that. And to this day, they still don't do that. So we were trying to build a system. Clearly, it was not that successful. To help evaluate military equipment. And that was more of a business process re-engineering project for me. Then I moved on to PricewaterhouseCoopers. After that, as a senior associate, started getting into proposal development, business development on your way to making manager, right? And at PwC, I actually started working on more organizational design, organizational change projects. If you remember that movie Up in the Air with George Clooney, like that was our job to go in there. I ended my career as a Big Four management consultant, actually in a very interesting project working with the FDIC. At the time, it was 2008, they were closing down all the banks, and I was on the team that would show up on Friday afternoons with the federal marshals and all of that to close the banks down and then transition them to the new acquiring institution. So that was a really interesting experience, but it was a soul-sucking one, and the reason why I actually decided to leave professional services or Big Four professional services.
It was that bad that his soul got sucked out and had to leave the industry. I'm joking, but so that's kind of an interesting last project to enter consulting career, right? Yep. So how did you transition from consulting to marketing? Can you give us a little bit of background or the thought process behind it?
It's funny. It was not a natural, right. It was kind of natural, but not really natural. No. And it's you know me, like by sheer nature, I do a lot of random things. And when I'm into something, like I've always tried to find a way to make a life out of something that I like. Right. And when you're young and you're in your 20s, and especially when you graduate from school, you're sort of like, okay, I need to get a job. I got to get that W-2 paycheck. Mm-hmm. At the time when you're living in DC, you're kind of living the yuppie lifestyle. You're driving a BMW. Your
new condo.
Yeah, you buy a new condo, right? You do all those things. And I was traveling doing the consulting thing Sunday to Thursday. That's fine when you're young, right? You don't care about traveling. In fact, you want to rack up miles and hotel stays and all of that. But every Thursday I would come back, and then on the weekends, I would find a way to DJ on the side. And I started basically moonlighting as a DJ on the weekends because you have tons of energy. Your hangovers don't last 2 or 3 days anymore, right? Like you're up and at them, the next day. And I remember we would go to this place in DuPont Circle, this place called 1223. And it was an open bar, and
on a Thursday. And for some reason, we just loved to drink Grand Marnier. I don't know why. It was disgusting. Now, all I can taste is this, all I can think about is this gross orangey liquor in my mouth. But that aside, I was DJing in DuPont Circle, and around the time, that's when Facebook released their ad platform. Mm-hmm. And when Facebook released their ad platform, it wasn't difficult. It was just what ad do you want to put in front of people? What picture do you want to put? What words do you want to put? And who do you want to target? Where do they live? Are they interested in electronic music? Right. Do they remember, it was just if you liked a page back then, do they like the venue that you're playing at? Right. And so I realized you know what? I started playing around with it. I said, I can run this ad and get in front of a few thousand people for 10 cents.
yeah, no brainer. Because, as a DJ, you're a promoter too.
Right.
You're handing out flyers on the street.
Yeah.
And, that's actually marketing and sales, quite frankly.
And teaches you to have thick skin,
Yeah,
which I think
yeah.
is a skill that is
I think, yeah.
really valuable in the business and just real life, but most people don't really have the opportunity to practice that.
Yeah. Now that you say that, I feel like it was sort of, and I started businesses before, but this was, you're literally on the street handing out flyers after someone's gig is over to promote the next night, right?
And most people just throw it on the ground. So you just, keep doing it, keep moving to the next person.
But it was cool. Like, we were with friends and we were just shooting the shit and all that sort of, but so I ran these ads and realized and I noticed, hey, as I run these ads, more people are showing up to the gigs and I don't have to stand on the street handing out flyers anymore. It's
Right.
such a better use of my time. So I just kept running the ads. And then back then, I was huge. I was just big in communities and message boards and old school forums, right? And
That was before Reddit or?
this was during Reddit. And Reddit was already out and Reddit was what it is today, And in fact, there was a lot of people talking about his digital DJing, the idea of using your computer to DJ instead of CDs and turntables was just really starting to come to critical mass. So a lot of people would go online, like, how the heck do I set up this computer software? Mm-hmm. And so I would go on these forums learning how to do all this stuff. And then sure enough, on these forums, it was a community. It was a DJ community, DJ Tech Tools, in fact. It's still out there now. They're a retail store. But they posted something on there about, hey, we're a Chinese-based pro audio manufacturer. We want to sell our products in the US. We're exhibiting at a big trade show called NAMM. Mm-hmm. It's basically like the CES for the music industry. And we need someone to come and demonstrate our products that knows DJing and can speak well. And I basically sent in a video. I forgot what I recorded. I think I recorded it on my BlackBerry, now that I think about it. I sent in a video of myself demonstrating a piece of DJ equipment, how to use it. And I remember recording my BlackBerry being like, I can't email this thing to myself because it won't accept, right? And so I remember recording it to an SD card and then putting it into my computer and then sending it to them. And then they replied to me and say, hey, that's great. We'd love here. We're going to pay you for the weekend. So I actually took 6 vacation days off of work, flew out to Anaheim, and just learned their products and demonstrated them to retailers who are looking to buy them. And after spending a week with them, they're like, Andrew, we'd love to hire you. We heard about you doing Facebook ads and this. In the span of 3 minutes. What's up?
You're moving a lot.
Oh, and so I was actually able to grow their Facebook page to about 70,000 folks within a couple of months.
Wow.
And there weren't bots back then, right? And so it was very organic. And I was like, man, this social thing is something. So I just started to get random clients coming to me who heard about me to run Facebook ads and eventually Google ads for them. And that was really my first kind of foray into quitting a steady kind of consulting job to being a freelance consultant, essentially. Yeah.
I see. So is that when you decided to start Tobe? Or there's a bit of transition period?
So there was a random part of my career. I worked in private equity for a little bit and tried to acquire a couple of mortgage companies with Chinese-based capital.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. So that was after DJ Tech.
That was after DJ Tech. I was a freelancer then. I decided that I couldn't really build a life in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I had this opportunity from a Chinese private equity company who was looking to invest in the mortgage space. And I've been in the mortgage space because my dad, my entire life. And they just needed kind of like a general manager to set up the fund and look for acquisitions and source them and do due diligence. So I did it for 2 or 3 years. I ended up being the chief marketing officer of a company that we acquired. It was a direct-to-consumer mortgage company. So I learned a lot at scale about advertising, and they're called like retail media networks now.
Yeah. And kind of running a company from zero to stand up a company from
Yeah,
zero,
it was
right?
interesting because there's a cultural thing with all these Chinese companies that come over. They want to do business the Chinese way.
Yeah.
But we needed to recruit people like high-powered executives to run the company, and and so I learned a lot about how to run a company. I learned a lot about how to be entrepreneurial with a lot of money. Because this is one of those things where it was like a blank check. It was like the money was there, it was committed, but we had to like prove things along the way to get it released and dispersed. And so I learned a lot of things. I grew up a lot, I think, in my business career, like essentially running that fund in the US. It's still there, and they're still making mortgage investments, but for me, there was just too many cultural challenges, even being Chinese and Vietnamese, and it just, you know this as well. Like your family is, they're business people, and there's some challenges, right? And not just because we're different, right, in the way that we approach things.
Yeah. But my thought was that I think Andrew is just someone with such intense thoughts and motivation and drive to do things when he sees opportunity or the actions to be taken. I just think that he needs to be his own boss and call the shots and make things happen. Because otherwise, if he works for someone else, they're never going to be at the same wavelength as he is. So inevitably, he's always super frustrated. So I'm personally glad that he started Tobe, but the beginning was not fun either.
Right.
So Andrew, what was the driving force for you to start Tobe? And then I think our audience who is listening might be especially interested in the beginning.
Yeah. So 2016, there was a company that we had invested in, and the principal of the company had been going to HubSpot's inbound conference since about, I think, 2013 or 12 or something like that. And I kind of heard about HubSpot in the periphery. I knew about it as a marketing company. I didn't even know they were really a software and what they did. But he said, "Hey, Andrew, like you're into marketing. You seem to have grown a pretty good practice around paid ads and things like that. Why don't you come to Boston to check out this inbound conference?" So I bought a ticket, flew out there, stayed with him. He gets a room every year. And so I went to that conference and I was inbounded, I guess, by HubSpot.
He was enchanted.
Yeah,
by
I
the
went to it.
possibilities.
It was the year that Trump got elected. That's right. It was the year Trump got elected. And I remember the day after, it was interesting because you're in Boston. It's a pretty liberal city, right? And it's just like there was like this heavy thing over the air, and it was like the world had ended, right? And I was not. I would say I'm more into politics now than I was then, right? Mm-hmm. I think everybody probably is, for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really care. I was like, oh man, this is kind of wild. We got, this crazy guy as president. And I remember of all people, Gary V was like a big, he was on his sort of epic rise at around that time. And I remember saying, like, in his like Russian Jew, like voice, right? Like if you think that if you think that there's like this whole election means anything to your life, right? Like you're wrong, because it doesn't mean anything to your life. And I think in a lot of ways he was right. I don't agree with a lot of things that Gary Vee says, but I remember that very vividly. In any case, I went to that conference. I understood the methodology of inbound, which is the world is really noisy. It's only gotten noisier. It's going to continue to get noisier. And we knew this in 2016 before we had TikTok or anything like that.
And now with the AI, I think the level of noisiness just exponentially increased since last year.
Yeah. Right. And so that trend, that was a trend I saw, was that if you want to acquire customers online, it's going to get really hard if you don't have a very core value to your marketing and your sales, which is always provide value first. You have to give stuff for free first to start the conversation with a stranger online, right? If you try to just, I always give this example. We get these emails all the time in our inbox. There's a guy who messages, or a woman who messages you and says, "Hey, I'm so-and-so from this company. We do this. What if I could tell you we could save you 30x per month or per day? Here's a link to my calendar. Do you want to book some time with me?" Like, if someone walked up to you at a conference and said that to you, you'd be like, "Who the hell are you? Like, get away from me, crazy person. Like, are you a robot?" Right?
100%.
But why do we do that when we try to sell to people and when we try to do marketing to people? It's like every email we send has to be about a promotion. We got to tell them about this. Well, why can't we tell people about the things that we're experts at, which can actually help them in their lives, right?
Yeah.
And so I realized that was the ethos behind HubSpot and their methodology. And they built technology to align with that. And I always have thought that you cannot do any digital marketing without a proper tech stack. And so after I got back from Inbound, I found out about their agency partner program. I actually reached out to a guy named Kirk, who no longer works at HubSpot, but he was like actually a pretty early on guy there. And I interned with him when I was at Freddie Mac back in the day. So I reached out to Kirk. And so Kirk, if you're listening to this, shout out, man. Yeah, I met Kirk when we were both in college, actually. And I said, "Hey, I know you work at HubSpot. Can you introduce me to someone there? Because I'm interested in becoming a partner." And he introduced me to a guy named Nick, who ended up kind of being our sales guy on the agency side. We had to make like a $10,000 or something like that investment to buy the software and get on the partner program. But basically onboarded with HubSpot, we guinea pigged it on ourselves, picked up the first couple of clients who were in my network. I just cold called people that I knew that had businesses and said, "I'm implementing this technology. It's the future if you're trying to build a marketing stack." And those initial customers are still with us today, actually, almost 10 years later.
So how many people did you have to cold call to get that first initial few?
Not many.
Okay.
Not many. And because I've always been a good networker. I've always taken meetings with people. And I think that's a good piece of advice to like young people out there is like, you'll hear a lot of advice like don't waste your time and this and that. But when you're young, like you don't know when you're wasting your time, to be honest. So you should try everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if there's ever, and I'm still doing the same now, I'm not young anymore, but if there's any time someone reach out to you, they want to talk or learn more about you or like ask you a question, I always say yes, because 9 times out of 10, well, having a real conversation with somebody kind of, bonds you guys together. And then 9 times out of 10, it will turn into something else that I never expected. And it's never immediate. It might be years later, months later. So open your heart, keep your mind open, and allow these opportunities come into your life.
Yeah, and if you're running a firm and you've got, I think one of the hardest things is getting junior level staff up to a certain level of emotional, mental, whatever maturity. Like you need to tell them to part of your job is to build relationships with clients. That's not just done through your deliverables, but in the side conversations you have with them and the lunches you do and things like that.
Yeah.
So I had always done that well, I think, since I was a kid. I never really had a childhood, to be honest with you, right? Which is why Lisi says I'm so like intense and everything. I know some of my clients say that too, Diane, like, how intense I am. And it takes a certain kind of client to work with me, but I think when we find the right one, we have a really fruitful relationship. Anyways, tangent aside, as we were building Tobe and kind of getting like the first sort of clients, I think I reached out probably a group of like 50 people that I knew were business owners or higher up their executives, and just individually emailed all of them, "Hey, I'm starting this company. I've learned about this technology. And if you're not thinking about how to connect your CRM into email and your website and all of that, like you should really be thinking about this. So let's talk if you want to learn more.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch that wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
So I talked to them and they're like, you know what? We don't like our CRM. We're wasting money on it. And that was the first opening to be like, okay, let's talk about HubSpot. And those were our first clients. And, you know, like once you get your first one, then it's you have a little more confidence to sell your next one. And it was a lot of hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
You know,
and this is such a good advice too for any, like this experience Andrew went through during that time. I think it's such a great advice for anybody who's trying to start a company. Because I think from just, you know, working with Tobe and our clients, we come across a lot of brands and individuals who think, you know, they have a great idea. They just want to jump into marketing and doing, you know, social right away. And then you realize that's not doing anything for you. So I think the best way to start a company or start anything is reach out, like reach out to your network first.
You always hear me say like hand-to-hand combat is like the best way to get something off the ground. And once you kind of get your initial traction, then you start trying to do things at scale, right? Marketing, brand awareness, like all that stuff.
Which I'm sure we'll get into during our later recordings.
Yeah.
But so now, you know, we kind of arrived at Tobe today, right? How, you know, who Andrew was, how he got started, why, and where he started Tobe. So here we are. Tobe is 7 years in existence
we'll
now.
be going on 8 years.
Going on 8 years. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yep.
So what is in store for Tobe this year? And what are you most excited about?
Yeah. You know, over the years, you know, we ran this company through a pandemic, ran it through a recession / whatever soft landing that we're still undergoing. So it's been a really turbulent, I would say, last half decade, you know? And one thing's for certain is that I've noticed that, the idea of digital marketing has become very commoditized and continues to be more so with AI and, you know, everything that's going on in the world right now. But even going on further, the concept of a professional services firm, which is what we are, right? We're an agency. We're a professional services firm. We people pay us for our knowledge, our time, our people resources. We don't make a product, if you would. You're seeing this transition towards professional services firms productizing themselves and becoming less service-based. I think anyone that has a CPA firm, if you're a business working with a CPA firm, there's a very good chance that this year your CPA firm sends you an email about moving you over to a subscription-based model as opposed to coming from a pay at the end of the year to do all your taxes. I've seen this not only with my CPA firm, but ones that I advise as a client. I see it all over Twitter too. These CPA firms starting to make this transition to becoming more productized and subscription based.
So they can kind of have income all throughout the year.
Yeah, and like the clients just don't like to get a giant bill at the end of it. Like I don't like.
Right.
I don't want a $50,000 bill at the end of the month, and it's kind of what the heck is this for? Yeah, they were doing our taxes, but if it was sort of like billed $5,000 a month or whatever to say, hey, we're working on this, we're spending this amount of hours, it's a little bit more transparent and it's a little bit easier to predict the bill, right? So for Tobe this year, we've always focused really on three things: content, which is making content, whether it's podcasts, videos, blog posts, emails, like just creating content, coming up with a strategy for it. But
and
also
the creatives for it.
That's right. Exactly. It's making the content, but on the other side, it's also what do we do with this content to either get brand awareness, to get consideration or leads, or to eventually get a conversion, right? So we do the content side of things and we continue to do that. And then on the community side, I've always, you know, as you all see with the professionals, I'm putting my money where my mouth is when it comes to community-led growth, because I truly believe that it's the future of customer engagement as well as prospect engagement, right? And so I've launched probably 50 plus communities over the last 2 or 3 years, big ones, small ones, professional ones, more B2C ones, more cultural kind of communities, dabbled in Web3 as well, right? And I've noticed that, yeah, communities are the future of like how we connect with people. And they're not even their future, they're here and they're going to continue to be here and I think be more important. So we do Yeah, and we'll talk about community
Of course.
in this community for sure.
Yeah. Well, so sounds like you're very excited about the community building aspect of
Yeah.
Tobe for the next phase, right?
Yeah, in fact, I really put my money where my mouth is. We hired in Will, and the reason we hired in Will as a really senior level sort of marketing strategist is that I was involved in a lot of client work, and I needed to bring someone in who knew more than I did, but also could take over those clients so that I could focus on our product-led growth. And really, the last piece of it is technology. So we implement HubSpot, we build technology stacks, and really we're using this technology to create these more subscription-based productized services for Tobe. And that's really what my focus is on, is creating new products for Tobe this year, staying focused on content, community, and technology, obviously, but also creating more content for our communities. In fact, I only want to publish the content that we're creating here to our own private communities. I just, social is social, it's fine, but I just find I make better connections with people in smaller groups. And that's why I wanted to build this community.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's really exciting. And I think you have shared a lot with us today, including some that I didn't even know about. So that was kind of cool. If, we kind of mentioned that you're kind of intense person. And for those who are listening, if Andrew mentioned something that you're really interested about learning more or implementing to your own business, so yeah, Andrew, if anyone who wants to work with you, what should they expect from you?
Yeah, I mean, the work that I do these days is more strategy and just straight up consulting work. A lot of times the problems that I solve don't just touch marketing or sales or revenue. They touch operations or human capital or...
Because a lot of times he has to get those in order first before they can even do marketing for the company.
Yeah, it's funny. Like one of our bigger clients today, one of my first jobs was to go in and rip and replace the P&L, and that's not every marketing agency owner can do that. I can. But if you're working with me, you're probably working more on the strategy sort of consulting side. You're probably going to be a little uncomfortable because I'm going to be very clear with you about things that you're probably doing wrong, and that the best clients are the ones that know that they reach out to me because they want to innovate on something or do something different. And that typically means doing something that you're not comfortable with. And, a lot of what we're doing and making investments in is trying to skate to where the puck is going. We certainly have all the stuff we do where the puck is now, which is email, SEO, pay-per-click,
social,
Social, we have to do that. But really if you work with me, you're looking to where the puck is going. And that's why I wanted to start this community, because the meetings that I have with clients aren't always appropriate to talk about these like really big picture sort of innovative things. And the professional services world needs to innovate, right? And I think it's a really old school. The best example actually was when I was talking to someone who worked at EY, and I brought up ClickUp and Asana and all these, and they're like,
"What's that?
What is that?" I was like, "Dude, how do you not know these tools? They're like basic SaaS tools." They're like, "But we're on SharePoint." I'm like, "Oh, you probably use Microsoft Project and all of that, right?" And so I just realized, like, man, there's still a lot of innovation that can happen here. And
especially for those bigger companies. Yeah. And if you're a director or VP at bigger companies, you probably want to start thinking about what the market and the world is going to in the next 5 years instead of what's happening right now.
Or even the next year, right? Like where things are going with AI. Like, I'm sure a lot of you out there who are doing advisory work, there's AI coming up in your conversations. Like, we have figured out a way to use AI in our agency for efficiency and workflow and administrative stuff, right? And I think a lot of you can learn from, what we're building here. So I again, this whole point of this was just to like share a little bit more about who I am. And obviously you as my wife is probably a good guide in being able to ask those questions. But I think in the future, I'm going to be hosting this. The beauty is that I've got some really awesome people within my own network that are very relevant to probably what a lot of you are doing in the professional services world. I've got a lot of alumni from KPMG and Deloitte and PwC that I'm going to interview. In fact, next month when you tune in, I'm going to interview my first boss, actually. Matt Nano, who Lisi knows as well because we all hung out in the Northern Virginia area after school. And Nano was a great boss. He was a great mentor. He's a friend to me now. He was at KPMG actually the last 20 years. So started his career in government, went to Australia on an international firm rotation, did government work there, did commercial work there, and is now back in the US doing stuff in the telecom world. And so if you want a little bit of insight into young professional services, Andrew, Nano can probably give it, I hope. And
I hope he keeps it appropriate.
Yeah, Nano is an interesting boss.
He'll be fun. He'll be really fun to listen to.
He gave me the frat vibe of KPMG when I was there. But it's an example of another piece of content. I'm sure Nano has some really interesting insights to share from how his world has changed at KPMG from the beginning until now. Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening in. I'm looking forward to all the cool things we'll do in this community together. And if you want to join me on an interview like this, please reach out to me or Emily, our community manager. Thanks, Lisi, for volunteering your time and questions. And I'll see you guys on the next one. All right. Take care.
Bye.